Shalom, Douglas Murray.
Good to be with you.
Author of The Strange Death of Europe. I'm holding the Hebrew translated version now. We'll talk about the Israeli target audience, the Israeli readers soon. When you sat down to put this book together, what was your main goal?
I wanted in one place to explain not just the breadth, but the depth of the problem that we face. People have before written about aspects of what I'm writing about, the migration, the immigration, the integration or lack of integration. But very few, I think, have been willing to go beneath this. This whole area is so complex that our entire political class in Europe has decided that because it's so complex, we have to all agree that it's all going to go fine.
Agree that it'll be okay?
It'll be okay.
Not confront any challenges.
I'm saying, what if it's not okay? What if this all goes horribly wrong? The answer that I tend to get from the political establishment in most of Europe is, and indeed from most of the media, is it can't go wrong.
Why?
Has to go right. Because otherwise we've screwed the whole thing up. I mean, an analogy I like to give on this is to move this number of people from this far away, this fast, into a place that has not actually had populations that wanted this to happen, is analogous to trying to find the vaccine for something and not doing any tests before you use it on your only child. It's a crazy thing to do. We don't have loads of continents to try this on. And I think it's very, very unwise to carry out a controlled experiment on the only thing you have. And that's what we've been doing, which is why everyone says, Douglas, it has to go right. And one of the things from that is, don't point out the things that are going wrong already. Don't do that. It's not helpful. It's very unhelpful. You'll make it happen. You'll cause it to go wrong.
What's the main flow coming in now to Europe?
When I was writing the book, in 2015, 2016, the flow was at its height. That was seeing thousands of people arriving every day on the Greek and Italian coastlines by boat. Not just at the beginning, Syria, but by very swiftly in, the Syrian refugees had either already got to Europe or were staying in the countries around Syria. So by 2015, 2016, most people coming had no asylum right. And this isn't my word you have to take for this. This is the European Union's own figures. The Frontex border agency's own figures said that in 2015 of the people who came, including more than 1 million people to Germany alone, the figures showed that most of the people coming had, quote, no more right to be in Europe than anyone else in the rest of the world. The most unremarked upon but the most significant factor of all now, which is that the reason why the boat landings have slowed, is because the European Union is paying a massive bribe, hundreds and hundreds of millions of euros of bribe, to President, Sultan, Caliph, whatever you want to call him, Erdogan, in Turkey, to stop the flow. We bribe him to stop the boats leaving.
How is he stopping him?
He's actually doing what he could have done at any point at the height of the crisis, which is literally stopping the movement through Turkey that allows them to then leave by boat and go to the Greek islands, as they were doing by the thousands when I was there. And so we're in this strange position, which, unsurprisingly, Mr. Erdogan knows he's got a great advantage on us over this. And Mr. Erdogan has several times threatened, because he has this gun to our head in Europe, that he will fire it whenever we do something that displeases him. To begin the flow again.
Now, what can you tell us about the consequences? And everything's all so politically correct, because you're not allowed to say, oh, this society has these kind of problems, and you're not allowed to say anything. But what should be said about the consequences of these flows?
My view is that you have to be honest, and you have to analyze it in the round. Now, people who claim that everybody who arrives is going to be violent are obviously crazy. This is not the case, and it's a deeply dishonest way to portray it. But you can't only look at the positives. You have to look at the whole picture. And the whole picture is a big mess. The whole picture is a big mess. Most things happen because of a screw-up, and this is one of the monumental screw-ups of all time.
Now, you're taking the book, the topic, and talking and speaking around the world, and I understand that the whole story and your whole concept is accepted very differently in different countries.
Some countries I meet people who say, yes, of course, and other countries they say, how dare you? But my own view is that the trajectory in every country, in Europe at any rate, is exactly the same. Everyone is at different stages along the same path, but the path doesn't change. For instance, in France, this book did very well, but it was not controversial, because even the French left agrees with a lot of what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. If you were to say there might be some problems that come from the integration not working, they say, yeah, we know that because we lost 130 people in one night in Paris. If I say, look, some people don't seem to get the concept of free speech all that well when they come into our societies, the French say, yeah, we know. We had Charlie Hebdo. And much more. So some countries it's not that controversial in. Other countries, particularly Germany, has been a deathly silence despite the book selling out on its first day there. And that's because they are, as it were, the most closed in their debate. Other countries used to be closed and are opening up very slightly.
The migrants are there. The path is really to death, as you write? Or to some sort of a death?
Yes. I don't think you can overstate. I don't think it's possible to overstate what could go wrong here and the path that we're on unless we shift it. One of the most obvious things that we should have learned by now is if you import the world's people, you also import the world's problems. And that doesn't mean it's all problems, but it means you're going to have to start contending with things you just hadn't thought about.
So what could be done now? I mean, are you talking about, imagine Europe with all the trauma of the Holocaust starting to kick out people from their countries?
One of the deep issues in this book, which I really wish that people would absorb more, the people who would agree and admire this book, as well as the people who disagree with it, and sadly there are some of them, they all pick up on the migration bit. They pick up on the them bit. Very few people have picked up on the us element of this book, what I describe as the deeper layers. The deeper layers of why. What I describe as the guilt, the tiredness, the existential tiredness, and the sense that the stories run out. These three chapters in particular, I wish people would absorb more. And there's a reason for that, which is that it's only by understanding these deeper conundrums that you can realize the depth of our real problem. So as you referred to Europe's post-Holocaust history, you're right. It's everywhere. It's the reason why you see people at train stations in 2015 in Munich and elsewhere welcoming the migrants coming off the trains as if they were heroes returning from war, or a football team that's just won the World Cup returning home. Why this? Why the handing out of balloons? Why the cheering? Why the clapping? Why the crying? We know why. Existential
guilt
that they think they're alleviating by doing this thing. Now, this simply doesn't fall out in ways that people have predicted. Let me give you an example. In my own country, there's another Holocaust memorial being erected at the moment. The government and others have funded it. What is the lesson that Britain is trying to learn from the Holocaust at the moment, or is in the process of learning? Something like this. Although it was the Germans who did this, and we in Britain had basically no role in it, I certainly think we have no guilt for the Holocaust in Britain. Nevertheless, we are all in some way responsible for German guilt. And what is the lesson that we can take from the Holocaust? The lesson we can take from the Holocaust is don't be mean about anyone. Don't criticize anyone, particularly not because of any religious or racial attributes. And in the end, down the road, the most pertinent lesson that we are learning in Britain about this is the lesson that we should learn from the Holocaust of European Jewry is don't be mean to Islam.
So, as we mentioned, this book has been translated to Israel. What is your message? What is important for you that the Israeli crowd will understand?
I think it's vital that an Israeli leadership fully learns the depth of what is currently Europe's problem. And I say that partly because I think that in the years ahead this is going to get infinitely more complex even than it is at the moment. And this country has, for reasons we don't need to expand upon, very good reason to worry about Europe. One thing that can happen from my observation of what I would regard as a form of secular Judaism is that Judaism can, like Christianity, devolve into a form of non-believing social welfare activism. That is, people say, I've seen this a lot in the American coasts, not very devout anymore, but basically being Jewish is to be social care active.
Tikkun olam, they call it.
Right. And I've met many people, good people, nice people. These are also the sort of people who push the migration, the mass migration, most readily. They say, why not? Why not share with the world? And the Swedish churches, for instance, the Scandinavian churches, the Protestant churches, to a great extent the Catholic churches as well, including the Pope, they also push this. So what I've tried to do in this book is to address this hardest issue of our time head on, without any political correct sensitivities or anything like that, and look at the breadth and depth of this issue, because it's not just an issue for Europe, it's an issue for every single developed country in the world. And I think in our lifetimes this is going to be the single biggest issue. Who is allowed to live where in an age when anyone can move anywhere?
Douglas Murray, thank you very much.
Thank you.